A warrior stumbles, sword slipping from blood-slicked fingers. The battle rages, but his world is fading, cold creeping through his limbs. The sky turning to shadow. Then a gust of wind, wings, figures descend from the storm, their armor glinting like ice, eyes burning with something not of this world. The Valkyries. Their voices weave through the chaos, naming the fallen, deciding who will rise again in Odin's hall and who will be forgotten. The warrior's breath falters. Will they choose him? Will he feast in Valhalla or be cast into the depths of hell? One Valkyrie turns, locking eyes with him. She speaks, but her words are not what he expected. You are not ready. The words strike harder than any blade. Not ready. The warrior's mouth fills with blood and disbelief. Not ready. After all he's done, after every wound, every scream, every friend buried in the mud, his chest heaves not with breath, but with rage. He tries to rise, but his limbs betray him. The ground beneath him is cold and wet. The Valkyrie's gaze doesn't waver. She is not cruel. She is not kind. She simply is a force older than stone, a chooser of the slain. You sought glory, she says, her voice a wind through the winter trees. But you feared pain. You struck true, but not first. You waited. You doubted. She kneels beside him, close enough now that the light in her eyes blinds him. There are worse things than death, worse even than hell's gates. The forgotten, they become shadows. They wander hungry, they rot, but do not rest. That is not your fate yet. He tries to speak, his throat works, but no words come, only a rasp, a plea. She touches 2 fingers to his chest. His heart stirs, not strongly, but it stirs. Rise again, she whispers. Earn the song. Fight until the gods cannot ignore your name. She stands, the wind takes her cloak, the storm swells. All around them, warriors are being lifted from death. Eyes blazing, wounds forgotten, but not him, not yet. The Valkyrie disappears into the sky, and the lone warrior lies, breathing, bleeding, burning. Still alive, he stares up at the empty sky where the Valkyrie vanished, her words echoing louder than the war drums ever did. Rise again, earn the song. His body screams with pain, every rib feels cracked, his leg twisted beneath him, his sword a shattered memory beside him. And yet he's still here, still breathing. Around him, the battlefield exhales its final breath. A shield lies splintered over a fallen friend's face. A spear still quivers in the throat of a war horse. The wind moves through the dead like a priest through a chapel, quiet, reverent, cruel. He turns his head with effort, his cheek grinding against the mud. There, just yards away, another warrior, eyes wide open, mouth still caught in a scream that would never end. A boy, barely grown, his axe too large for his hands. No Valkyrie came for him, and yet the wind had whispered other names. Men he knew, men no braver than he, but they had been chosen. Not him, not yet. A great silence presses on his chest, heavier than the dying sun above, the silence of not being enough. But somewhere beneath the weight, something stirs, not pride, not anger, resolve. If he was not enough, he would become enough. If the sagas did not yet sing his name, he would give them reason to. He clenches his fist. Pain floods him, but he welcomes it. Pain means life. Life means another chance. The sun breaks through the clouds, just a sliver catching on the hilt of a forgotten sword in the dirt. Not his own. Better. He crawls. Every inch of movement feels like fire through his bones. But he moved because he's not been claimed, and that means he still has a say. He drags the sword to his chest and he lays still, breath rattling. The wind quiets, the ravens return. One lands near him, tilting its head, watching, waiting. In the distance, the last of the living gather. A few rise, bruised and bloody, looking around as if waking from a dream. The warrior watches them. He wonders if they saw the Valkyries too. He wonders if they felt the same icy judgment pierce their soul. You're not ready. The words burn again, but now they burn as fuel, because one day, when the sky darkens and the winds howl, when wings thunder once more over the blood-soaked field, he will do his best to be ready, but he still wonders if she will call his name. Now I want you to imagine standing on the deck of a Viking warship, the salt wind biting your face, the oars slicing through the sea as a band of warriors chant in rhythm. Ahead lies battle, and with battle, the question that haunts every warrior: what happens when I die? For the Norse, death was not the end, it was a crossing. But to where? That depends on the Valkyrie, the mysterious figures who rode between life and death, plucking the chosen from the battlefield and guiding them to their fate. But the Valkyries were more than mere escorts of the dead. They were weavers of destiny, agents of the gods, and at times even lovers of mortals. Their presence on the battlefield was both a blessing and a warning, because not all who died in war were taken to Valhalla. The Viking afterlife was far from simple. Forget the modern notion of Valhalla as an eternal beer hall where every warrior is guaranteed a seat. The truth, drawn from the Poetic Edda, the Prose Edda, and the sagas, is far more fascinating, far more terrifying. The word Valkyrie comes from the Old Norse, and it means chooser of the slain. They were Odin's warrior maidens, divine beings sent to decide who would live and who would fall in battle. The Poetic Edda gives us some of the earliest descriptions of Valkyries and help us understand that they were tied to the Vikings' fate. They were not mere spectators. The Valkyries fought alongside the warriors they chose. Some even wielded their own weapons, cutting through enemies like living storms of steel. But they did more than simply choose warriors. They shaped the battle itself, ensuring victory or orchestrating defeat. In the sagas, not all Valkyrie rode on horseback, with spears in hand and helmets of gold gleaming like lightning in the storm. Some appeared before battle, not as warriors, but as weavers. In the darkest sagas was made of human bones, its threads the entrails of the dead. Skulls hung like counterweights, swaying gently as if nodding to the fate already sealed. They sang while they wove, grim, bone-chilling chants that bound warriors to their doom. Before the swords clashed, before blood touched the earth, the Valkyries had already decided who would die. Each line of entrail twisted into fate, each drop of blood on their spindle was a life cut short. The warriors below never saw them, but those who heard their whispers, those who dreamt of the loom the night before battle, they rarely lived to speak of it. All warriors knew that the Valkyries did not choose in the moment. They had already woven their end. This eerie scene reflects a chilling belief. Fate was already written. The Valkyries were merely delivering its verdict. For warriors, Valhalla was the ultimate prize. It was Odin's great hall, where the bravest of the fallen feasted by night and fought by day, preparing for Ragnarok, the end of the world. But not all warriors went there. The Prose Edda tells us of another hall, ruled by a different god. It was said that half of those that died in battle went to Odin, while the other half went to Freya. Freya's hall is far more mysterious than Valhalla. Some scholars believe it's a place of peace, possibly even a paradise. Others think it was a mirror of Valhalla, another training ground for the final battle. Either way, to be chosen by Freya was an honor because the afterlife was often grim. Hel, ruled by the goddess Hel, Loki's daughter, was the fate of those who died from illness, old age, or misfortune. While modern portrayals paint it as a place of suffering, early Viking sources suggest Hel was not necessarily a place of torment. Instead, it was a cold, shadowy underworld, a realm of the forgotten. Yet there were worse fates than Hel. Warriors who died a dishonorable death, such as cowards, or those who betrayed their men on the battlefield. They were sent to a place called the Corpse Shore. Here the wicked suffered in a place filled with venomous serpents and rivers of poison. For the Vikings, the manner of death mattered more than life itself. A king could be forgotten if he died weak and bedridden, while a farmer who died with an axe in his hand might feast in Valhalla forever. The Valkyries were more than supernatural warriors. They were symbols of fate, war, and even love. Many sagas tell of Valkyries falling in love with mortal men. The most famous of these is a Valkyrie who disobeyed Odin and was cast to the earth. Cursed to sleep in a ring of fire until a hero would awake her, their tragic love story told in the Volsung saga. The story has shaped many tales and even parts of modern fantasy. But there is something even deeper in these stories, the idea that the divine could become mortal. When a Valkyrie fell in love, she often lost her immortality. She became human, suffered human grief, and was bound by human fate. In this, the Valkyrie blurred the line between gods and men, between those who chose the slain and those who were slain. The idea reflects the Vikings' own struggle with fate. They believed their destinies were already woven, yet they still fought to change them. A warrior who knew he would die still took up his sword, for to die well was to win against fate itself. But there's what most people don't realize. The Valkyries weren't just mythological background characters, they were the algorithm of fate itself. In the Viking mind, life wasn't a straight path from birth to death. It was a woven thread spun and knotted by the gods and finally judged by the Valkyries. They were the ones who decided whether your thread would be cut short in dishonor or woven into glory. They were the unseen force that made sense of chaos on the battlefield, and every warrior knew this. You didn't fight for survival, you fought to be seen, to be counted, to be named. Because if a Valkyrie names you, you lived forever. The stories passed through firelight. They weren't just entertainment, they were how the Vikings shaped their souls. They didn't fear death, they feared dying without being chosen. Let that settle in. Think of what that does to a culture. A young man, standing on the edge of his first raid, praying not for safety, but for glory. For the eyes of the silver-clad Valkyrie to find him in the storm. Now, fast forward to today, we may not call them Valkyrie anymore, but deep down, aren't we still haunted by the same question? Will anyone remember my name? Will my life mean something? Will someone choose me? And here's the twist. The Valkyries didn't always pick the strongest, not the richest, not even the most skilled. They chose the ones who dared, who didn't wait for fate to come, who ran toward it. So maybe that's the ancient lesson buried in the Eddas and the sagas, that we are meant to live like warriors, not because we seek death, but because we know our time is limited and we want the story that we leave behind, to matter. The thread is still spinning, the loom still waits, and somewhere fate still calls. Valkyries weren't just symbols of death and fate. In the sagas, they were something far more complex, more human, more divine, and sometimes more dangerous. Let's dig into the sources. In the Poetic Edda, we see Valkyries named. They're not just a group, but they're distinct individuals, each with a personality and power. These weren't just war spirits, they were forces, some gentle, some cruel, some unpredictable. And they didn't always ride horses. In some tales, they fly like swans, cloaked in feathers. In fact, one Icelandic story tells of a man who steals a Valkyrie's feather cloak while she bathes, trapping her in a mortal form until she can retrieve it. Another saga tells of a Valkyrie who falls in love with a Viking hero. She defies the Allfather, orchestrates a battle to protect her lover, and then marries him. But when the Viking dies, the Valkyrie mourns so deeply that she dies of grief. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The Valkyries weren't always revered. In one ancient saga, as we explored earlier, they took on a darker role, looming like witches, weaving the guts of men into fate. That scene was intended to terrify. It showed that the Valkyries could also be instruments of horror, not just salvation. As Christianity spread through Scandinavia, the image of the Valkyrie evolved. They became less like spirits of fate and more like noble maidens, shield maidens, even queens, figures of honor rather than dread. In some medieval poetry, they're portrayed almost like angels or heavenly guides. The transformation is striking. From fate weavers soaked in blood and battle, to idolized warrior women, symbols of courage, purity, and strength. But make no mistake, the original Valkyries were not angels of light. They were terrifying and beautiful. They decided who would be remembered and in a culture obsessed with legacy, that made them more powerful than kings. In some old runic inscriptions, we found references that suggest Valkyries were invoked by warriors before battle, not just to be chosen, but maybe to influence the choice. A spiritual gamble, a whispered prayer. Even the gods had favorites after all. So next time you hear the word Valkyrie, don't just think winged warrior or Norse angel. Think of the battlefield, the woman in armor whose eyes see more than the present, the one who may name you or pass you by. If you want to get in touch with the Viking within you, you'll have to ask whether you're living a story worthy to be told. Because in the world of the Vikings, only the bold become legend. He stands near the bow, feet planted, knuckles tight on his shield's rim, the salt wind snapping through his hair like a banner torn in war. His wounds are healed now, skin laced with new scars, not as reminders of pain, but of proof that the gods had not yet finished with him. Behind him, his shield brothers chant low, a rhythm pulsing with rage and courage. Steel scrapes wood, leather tightens, the scent of pitch, sweat, and anticipation rise like incense to the sky. Ahead, land. Not gentle earth, not welcoming shores, but gravel, sharp and groaning under the weight of their destiny. The prow strikes it hard, grinding to a halt, stones rolling, cracking under the pressure. The men surge forward. The ship rocks as they leap into the waist-high surf, boots slamming through the brine, splashing through the dark until foot meets stone, and the roar of battle finds them. They are in it now. Arrows shriek from the ridge, shields snap up like reflex, a scream cut short, then the call, the charge, the storm of men. He stands still a moment longer, feet on gravel, eyes ahead, the clangor of battle swelling like a tidal wave before him. And just before he runs, just before muscle and instinct take over, a thought presses through his mind. She will see me now. He runs through the screaming haze of war, where blades clash like iron prayers and blood mists in the air like a crimson fog. His sword, no longer borrowed but earned, moves with anger, but purpose. Not with fear, but with fire. His breath is wild thunder in his chest. His feet strike the sand as if the earth itself were lifting him forward. Around him, his shield brothers falter, and he becomes the rallying cry, the voice of determination and confidence. He moves like lightning loose from the storm-split sky, a streak of wrath across the blood-wet sand. Where others stumble, he surges. Where shields crack, he becomes the hammer behind them. The beach is a battlefield of broken shells and broken men, sand churned black with seawater and blood, the brine thick with the iron stench of death. The hired soldiers move in, armed, orderly, rows of mercenaries paid in silver, eyes dull with duty, blades sharp with purpose. They do not know his name, but they will. He cuts down brute after brute with the sword he bore, a weapon not forged in gold, but hardened in denial and rage. It sings as it cleaves through the first man's neck, screams as it shatters the second spear. Every blow a sentence, every swing a story carved into bone. He drives back the hired army from the Salt Ledge Pass, a narrow tongue of rock where the cliff meets the shore. Their flanking route, their coward's path, but he's already there, waiting, bleeding, unmoving as stone, unbreakable as oath. He covers the flank where his shield brothers falter, where arrows rain down and men cry for help through cracked lips. He's the hinge in the gate, holding it fast while the tide threatens to break it apart. He rallies the rest, not with words, but with fury. A raised sword glinting red in the morning light, a bellow from deep within his chest, half roar, half prayer, that draws the tired to their feet and makes even the old blood sing. He does not fight like a man. He's not fighting to live. He's fighting to be worthy of dying. Then, the blow. Sudden. Final. A spear through the ribs, a burst of white hot inside his chest. He falls, knees to the earth, mouth full of blood and the taste of iron soaked in victory. But this time, he smiles. He has not been forgotten. The earth does not feel like a grave beneath them. It feels like a throne. And then they come. The air shifts. The storm peels open. Light bursts through a crack in the sky like the smile of the gods themselves. The Valkyries, not a shadow now, not a whisper, but radiant, blinding as snow on the mountaintops. Their cloaks ripple like banners of starlight. Their voices no longer distant, but singing, not mourning, welcoming. One descends, her horse riding the wind, hooves never touching the earth, spear held not in judgment, but in honor. She calls his name, spoken as if it had always belonged to the sky. She dismounts, kneels, and with a hand she lifts him, not his body, broken and bled, but his story. They rise, above the battlefield, above the dead, above the saga still being written. He looks down once, not in sorrow, but in pride. His deeds carved now into the breath of the wind, his name part of the chant his brothers sing, and before him, rising over the horizon like a city of flame and gold, Valhalla. Not just a hall, a roaring, endless feast of triumph, the scent of roasting meat and mead thick in the air, the echo of laughter like thunder on a mountain, the clang of swords, friendly now, ringing like bells at dawn. He is home. The gates swing wide, Odin waits. The fallen cheer, the mead horn is raised, and he, once unchosen, once unknown, enters the hall not as a man, but as a name that will never be forgotten. In the end, he fell, not as a man who was once passed over, but as a warrior who had earned his place in the song. He rose, not in body, but in legend. That is the lesson the Vikings have left us. We do not live forever, but our story can, our deeds can. The bold decisions we make and the adventures we live, the good we do for others, and the battles we overcome every day in our lives. So what will your saga be? Will you wait for the Valkyrie to call? Or will you seek truth and live in such a way that history cannot ignore your name? If this story stirred something in you, if your heart was beating louder as the warrior rose and ascended to Valhalla, then share this episode, pass it on to a friend. Let the echoes spread. Subscribe to the Viking Legacy and Lore podcast for more tales like this, more stories of war and wonder, gods and grit, loss and legacy. This is just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover and learn. Until next time, be bold, be strong, and awaken the Viking in you.